What's up everyone? It's your favorite Destiny Blueberry here, the Big Wiz, back with another Destiny 2 discussion video. Today, I would like to talk about Gambit and how it can be improved. Personally, I still enjoy playing Gambit from time to time. There are definitely some mixed feelings around the community about the mode, and I can absolutely understand that. Gambit can start to feel like a real chore after the third or fourth game. So how can Gambit be improved, all while maintaining the same level of accessibility and be engaging enough to keep players coming back? Well, I believe I have some possible solutions that could solve for Gambit's current issues. But before we jump into what those are, let me lay some groundwork. In a previous Director's Cut post, it was mentioned that the team at Bungie would like to see the Gambit/Gambit Prime playlist whittled down to just one central Gambit mode. Whether that mode would be traditional Gambit or Gambit Prime remains to be seen. Both have their pros and cons, and the community would seem to be divided on which Gambit experience is best. Quick disclaimer, I'm making this video assuming you know what Gambit is and how it works. So if you are either brand new to Destiny or you live under a rock, this video may not mean a whole lot to you. Go play some Gambit, then head back this way. Okay, here we go. First we're going to talk about what each mode brings to the table, the good and the bad. We'll start with traditional Gambit. It's a best of 3 round style. First team to win 2 rounds wins the entire match. While the game mode does have its own loot pool, the weapons and armor sets do not have intrinsic perks special to Gambit. If you bank motes in certain increments, you can send a blocker to the other side. Depending on how many motes you deposit determines the strength of the blocker. After a certain amount of motes have been deposited, your team has earned the chance to invade the enemy side. While invading, you can hunt down and kill players on the other team to slow their progress. The invader spawns with an overshield, while those defending have no extra means of protection outside of certain abilities that their class might have. The invader essentially has complete awareness as to where the other players are at all times. The defending team does not have that luxury. After your bank is full, your team summons a boss. The first team to kill their boss wins that round. If a third round is forced, it's a sudden death round where the boss will spawn immediately. The first team to kill their boss wins the game. In a nutshell, these are the core mechanics of Gambit. Now let's move on to Gambit Prime. The core mechanics remain the same. However, this is just one round to see who can kill their boss first. The boss can only be damaged once certain enemies are killed. It will drop a well of light where you can do increased damage to the boss by standing inside of it. The well is only active for a certain amount of time. Once time expires, you move to the next location and repeat the process. Unlike traditional Gambit, this mode does have unique armor sets tied to it that have perks unique to the mode, but they're only earnable through a completely separate activity in the game that has nothing to do with Gambit Prime, other than the fact that it rewards armor sets that are to be used within Gambit Prime. We won't talk about that mode though. Also, if you have more than one blocker on the enemy side, their bank starts getting drained of motes. Okay. Now that we've laid all these different features between the two modes out on the table, let's go through them and pick out what we want to keep, what we want to get rid of, and some things that we like but need tweaked a little bit. First things first, personally, I like the best of 3 rounds format. While it may not always be as fast paced, I like having the option to be able to switch loadouts between rounds. Sometimes I'll think to myself, well, this loadout was not as good as I thought it would be, or I need a better weapon to deal with invaders because my whole team is having a hard time against them, or I need an arc weapon to make fighting fallen captains easier. While opportunities to switch like that can exist in Prime, it's wasted time that could be used either killing blockers or collecting motes. Having a little break between rounds can help you formulate a better plan of attack for upcoming rounds. Next, blockers. Having blockers is a great mechanic. However, they can definitely be tweaked a little bit. For example, depositing 10 motes will send a Taken Captain over to the enemy side. Most of the time, I find that trying to fight a Taken Captain is a bigger pain in the butt than the Taken Knight, which requires 15 motes deposited. Well, technically speaking, the Taken Knight is the tankier enemy to fight. It has very sluggish movement and it's just overall easier to handle. On the other hand, the Taken Captain has a teleportation mechanic that seems to have no cooldown, on top of having a solar shield that you have to break. Oh, and did I mention that the Taken Captain also has a ranged melee ability that launches a darkness blast that deals heavy damage and suppresses movement if you pass through it, and how it seemingly has no cooldown? Basically what I'm saying is that the Taken Captain enemy type as a whole needs a major tweaking, or the medium blocker enemy needs to be changed to something else. Might I recommend a Taken Phalanx? You know, the ones that boop you around with their shield all the time? I feel like they're just annoying and challenging enough to be considered a medium blocker, but also not stupidly overpowered or strong compared to the large blocker. Also, I personally do not like the bank draining mechanic from blockers. The Invader armor set already has a bank draining mechanic, so I think it's better left to be a perk of that armor set as opposed to a mechanic from sending multiple blockers. When it comes to bank draining, you could have 25 motes deposited and be down to 0 before you know it. By this point, the other team could have a large lead that seems impossible to catch up to. I should not have to interrupt my streak of mote collecting just because my teammates cannot kill blockers quick enough. The only time I should stop collecting motes is when an invader is present. I don't want to risk losing the motes I have, so I'd rather take defensive positions and fend off the invader. Next, the loot. The armor sets are great. They're loot unique to Gambit, and they provide special benefits unique to the Gambit mode. If you look at the armor sets for the Leviathan raid, for example, you have the option to use mods that would provide benefits unique to any activity that takes place on the Leviathan itself. This gave us a reason to use those specific pieces of armor because they are the only sets capable of providing those benefits. Same goes with the Gambit armor sets. You basically have 4 different roles you can play. You have the Collector, the Reaper, the Sentry, and the Invader. It's sort of like picking a character in Overwatch. You have to pick the role you want to play. Except in Destiny, you can have as many of one role as you'd like. If you want 4 Collectors, go for it. If you want 2 Sentries and 2 Invaders, you have that freedom. Having these different armor sets adds depth to the mode that makes every single matchup a different experience in some way. That being said, the gear should be earnable from the mode itself, not by a completely separate activity that plays nothing like Gambit at all. You should retrieve this type of gear by ranking up with the Drifter or by winning matches, simple as that. Perhaps from bounties as well, but bounties are a completely separate video topic. Lastly, invasions. Look, without invasions, Gambit would no longer be a PvPvE experience. It would just be 2 PvE teams going against each other to see who can complete an objective first without any means of halting enemy progress other than sending blockers. Invading is what truly makes Gambit a unique activity in video gaming as a whole, but there are some adjustments I would make. Let's look at how invasions work in their current form. Once an invader enters the other team's arena, they spawn with an overshield, and with what are essentially wall hacks that let you see where the defending players are at all times, as well as how many motes they're carrying. Defenders have no extra means of protection unless they have a player wearing a Sentry armor set, which allows them to mark the invader for their teammates. So it's definitely fair to say that the invaders have a pretty strong advantage over the defending team. I mean, it is 1 Guardian against 4, so they would need to have some kind of advantage going in, I get that. But I'd like to see this tweaked a little bit. The invader would still spawn with an overshield, and would still have some form of player tracking. However, the player tracking would be like a pulsing tracker, similar to the Hunter's Metal Tree Night Stalker. Basically, instead of being able to see the enemy team's every move, the invader gets a quick snapshot of their current location followed by a 2 to 3 second cooldown, and then a new tracking pulse activates, and the same thing happens. This gives the defenders a chance to really try and psych out the invader by making random movements and make it harder for the invader to predict where you're going to be at any given time. Also, let's talk about the defenders for a bit. When an invader is present, they're able to see how many motes you're currently carrying, so if you have a high number of motes, you're most likely their main target. A lot of players are afraid to max out on their motes because they don't want to lose them to an invader. Really, the only safe time to try and max out on motes is at the beginning of a round where an invasion is not yet possible, and there's most likely not many blockers on the field yet. Here's a possible adjustment I'd like to see. Depending on how many motes you have, players can have an overshield of their own, using 5, 10, and 15 as the threshold. Select 5 motes, you get a weak shield, 10 motes a medium shield, and 15 a strong shield. These shields would only activate once an invader is present. If an invader goes in wanting to take out the guy with 15, I think they need to earn that kill a bit more. The strongest overshield would still be comparatively weaker than the invader shield since it's still a 1v4 situation. To combat players from hoarding 15 motes at all times, I would add some kind of penalty for not banking them. Perhaps something like, if your motes are not banked within 15 seconds of being maxed out, you'll start losing them. Something along those lines. I mean, if a player did hoard them just so they'd have a stronger shield against the invader, they're ultimately just hurting their team by not banking anyways, so maybe a penalty wouldn't be needed. It's hard to say since this isn't how the game actually works. It's just something I can see people trying to exploit. Also, quick note about the Primevals themselves. I love the Well of Light mechanic in Gambit Prime, however I do not like the fact that they're completely immune until a new Well of Light is created. I would like to see that change to where the boss is always vulnerable, but is extremely resistant to damage dealt outside of the well. There have been several instances where we would be plinking away at a boss's health bar, and our Well of Light expires just before we're able to kill them. And there's nothing we can even do, even though the boss only has a little sliver of health left. We would just have to repeat the process of creating a well before we can attack him again. This gives the opposing team time for a potential invasion and undo all the work you've done. If the boss is extremely weak after a damage phase, I think we should just be able to finish him off, even if the damage dealt outside of a well is drastically decreased. With some coordination with your team, applying buffs and debuffs, I think it should be possible to kill a Primeval without a Well of Light. To reiterate, I love having Gambit as a core activity, but it definitely needs an overhaul in my opinion. Just using Gambit or Gambit Prime to be the definitive Gambit mode going forward just isn't enough in my opinion. On a technical level, I don't know how easy it would be to make the adjustments that I talked about. All I know is that it would make Gambit as a whole a much more interesting and engaging activity. And ultimately, that is Gambit's biggest struggle right now. Other than just going for my weekly pinnacle drops, there's no reason for me to play the mode. Even if Bungie just decides to bring either Gambit or Gambit Prime forward, I hope there are some adjustments made to the mode itself, as well as the progression. Well, that basically sums it up for me, so let me know what you think in the comments. What changes would you like to see brought to Gambit, if any at all? Do you agree with my points? Do you disagree with them? If so, what would you change? Let me know. I'd love to hear what other community members think. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to click like. It is free after all. So is subscribing. So if you want to see more Destiny discussions and other related videos, be sure to subscribe so you can see when a new video goes up. You can follow me on Twitter @_thebigwiz. You can follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/thebigwiz. Those links will be in the description. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all are doing well and staying safe. Until next time, everybody.